Renaissance artist. Today I am down by the water and I have a really interesting idea for this third lesson in our Year 2 plein air module. I'm going to do a little bit of a seascape with the shore behind me, and I'm going to focus on the clouds. So I'll have a little bit of the water down below and then mostly the clouds. I've got some clouds over off to this way that are absolutely beautiful, billowy white clouds. And I thought it'd be fun to just kind of really talk about how to paint clouds and getting the form and structure into your landscape paintings. All right, so let's jump in. Now I have my regular setup here today. I have an 8x10 canvas and all of my regular paints: titanium white, cadmium yellow medium, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, and alizarin crimson. All right, so I have my regular brushes, odorless mineral spirits, and some linseed oils, so I am all set. So I'm going to angle this way and just sketch it out pretty quickly, and I'm just going to sketch it right on my canvas because really all I'm doing today is focusing on the sky. All right, so let's get going. So getting a smaller brush, I'm going to draw on here where I want my composition. Since this is going to be mostly about clouds, I want them to take up the predominant space and feeling in here, so I might even drop this horizon down a little bit lower. Some of these clouds coming in like this. I'm looking over my shoulder to get some of those big ones. And the shore will be coming like this. It's not going to be the real star of the show here, so it doesn't have to have a lot of time, attention, energy. It'll be very simple. I can put some of these waves in down here just to suggest some. The color of the water is absolutely beautiful, so I do want to try to capture some of that as well. Okay, now before my clouds change, what I'm going to do is turn my whole easel in a different direction and paint the clouds. So I'm going to start by mapping out the darkest areas of the cloud, making my blue background. I want to start with the blue of the sky and build my sky around that. And I'm using the blue shapes of the sky to help me in my composition and coming up with interesting passages where the eye will have a chance to rest. So I'm using this sort of almost as an abstract area, just where the clouds are going to live in here. That color of the sky down below has more violet and a little more sienna in it. Blue. It just has that sort of a grayish violet undertone. And that shadow under the clouds is fairly significant, showing form of the cloud. And then the atmosphere below it is a little bit lighter. Just a little. So whenever you have something like a sky like this, where immediacy is the issue and it's not going to stay, you have to just really approach it and attack it first. And since it is in my furthest away element of the composition, it makes sense to start with the sky. All right, now that I have some of those boundaries established, I'm going to start now to take a little bit more bluer mixture that's still fairly dark and work on the shadows, sculpting out the darker shadows of these clouds and just how the mass is in all of their shape up there. You always want to think light and airy and billowy when doing clouds. Adding the smallest amount of cadmium yellow to your white will start to lighten it and make it appear more sunlit. Just the smallest bit. And this is still not my lightest light yet. I'm reserving that for the parts up here where it's being hit by the sunlight most. I think I'll be adding a little bit of alizarin to the middle section of these clouds just to give it some almost peachy storm-like glow. So I'm gradually stair-stepping my way through the values here in sort of that middle tone. There's a subtle middle tone range of peach tones and a little bit more yellow, a little bit more alizarin. And then some of the passages have a little bit more bluer tint to the shadows. Just where maybe the rain is heavier inside the cloud, it's a little more dense. Lifting my brush as I stroke to get a little bit softer transition. And you can scumble color over color to get some lovely effects in there too, as long as it doesn't become really distracting, because you want the clouds to maintain a presence of being, in this case, really storm present. And so if I get the brush strokes to be what it's all about, and all the interesting textures and so forth, then we lose track of the story. And so we don't want that to happen. So again, I'm just mapping out the bulk of this form. squinting down at it to try to find the darkest places in the heaviest parts of the cloud now. So I've got some places in here that sort of carve out a presence. I've got what looks like the start of a lenticular cap up there in the cloud. It sort of is, it looks like a contact lens, and it does this really interesting swoop over some storm clouds sometimes. I would encourage you as an artist to know about your subject, whether you're painting people or nature, still lifes, animals. Study what it is you're painting. You come to a fuller, more fully realized depth of appreciation and understanding when you know more about it. In this case, understanding that these are cumulonimbus clouds, they're announcing a storm that's going to come. You can feel it in the water behind me, Lake Erie, and it's sort of this roaring, boiling mass today, even though the sun is shining. And it just has an overall really exciting feel to what's going on here. And so if I can try to get some of that in my plein air, then that's really what it's all about, is capturing that moment, the light, the feeling, the mood, the air, the atmosphere, that energy. Now, under this cloud, I'm just going to give it a little bit more of a definition that there's more atmosphere under the cloud, and that gives it a little bit more of a definition to its space. Okay. Now I'm going to come back through here and work on the brightest whites and lights in these clouds. Grabbing just the white, pure clean white, a little bit of yellow, cadmium yellow. Use your brightest whites sparingly. You don't want to just put them all over because we know clouds are white. You have to be very selective about where you allow this to be in here. So I'm wiping my brush off very carefully, and I'm softening some of these edges where the white meets the puffiness of the cloud. Letting my brush twirl and squiggle, and just sort of dance around the edges a little bit. I'm working on the interior of the cloud first, where the light hits it, and then I will focus on those wispy cirrus clouds as they're leaving the cumulonimbus. Now I'm going to just streak some of these cirrus clouds just out this way, just taking some of that white that I already have and just swooshing it out that way. I think I will try to get that lenticular in there. Now I'm looking over there to where the sky meets the water, and it's a little bit lighter right at the base. And so I feel that that's pretty much as far as I want to take the sky in this plein air study. I may come back to it a little bit, but I'm going to turn back around this way now and work on the coastline. Okay, starting with the furthest away, I'm going to work on the water first. And it's really dark teal color, so I'll get a little bit of my phthalo green for that, and ultramarine blue. May grab a little bit of burnt sienna just to neutralize it. And I want that edge to be softer, where the sky and the land meet, softer than what I see it in real life. Now, if that big of a cloud is over that part of the water, it's going to have to be dark like it is over there. And that way over there is getting that darker value because there are clouds over there. We just can't really see it that well because of the haze. So I am going to knock this out just a little bit darker. Now it turns into this beautiful phthalo green and white mixture. Little yellow, cad yellow in there, or yellow ochre. I may just pull that down a little bit further too. Now the water quickly turns to yellow ochre. Maybe a little bit more white in that. That's better. As the water comes over towards the shore, it's a little bit darker because it's getting some shadows from the trees and rocks. It's still fairly that green tone. Just laying down the base for my water before I start putting in the rocks, and then I'll build up the water much more. Okay, now the rocks. So those far away ones over there are pretty much a light gray. And then while I have this color, I'm seeing it in other places along the shore as well. Okay, now there's a dark brown representing the water line on those rocks. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. And again, while I have that color, I'm going to put it in a few other places where I see it, but remembering that my value has to be darkest and strongest right up towards me. And the trees, I'll get in ultramarine blue. Let's grab some yellow ochre, maybe a little cadmium yellow. Okay, so because I turned my easel around, I now have the light coming from this side of the tree, but when I painted the clouds, the light was coming from this side. So I'm gonna have to reverse the shadow on my tree. So I'll paint them all in with varying shades of green, a little ultramarine blue, yellow, cad yellow. Mix it up with a little white, little yellow ochre. Just grabbing different shades of this and that will help create a sense of variety in your greens. Now I'm going to paint the shadows because it's about 11 o'clock in the morning, and about that noonday light from about 11 to 1, shadows get very, very dark on trees. Because the sun is pretty much directly overhead. Get some more rocks in there. I'll just use the cloud color that I have on my palette since I don't really need that anymore. A little yellow ochre into that. So I'm going to put some purple shadows down in the water because to me they have the appearance of being a little bit on that purple tone. So alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue and some white. Yeah, that's better. Just laying these down where it seems that it would make sense according to my painting. I'm not worried about the waves yet. I'll put those in a little bit. In fact, this whole area in here has a very large shadow. right, now where the sun is shining through the water over there, a little bit of cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, phthalo green, a little more yellow ochre, some white, just to tone it down a little bit. All right, so I want to get some of the sky blue areas of the waves as the light is hitting them. So just taking some white and blue. That's too purple. So I'm getting the sun, or the sky, reflecting on some of these waves in here, just to give a little bit of this sense of water movement in here. And I'm leaving some of that green peeking through because that really is the color that is under the reflection of the sky. All right, well, that wraps up this week's plein air study as we looked more into capturing clouds and some of that movement that we see in the sky. So I encourage you to get out there and find some beautiful clouds wherever you are, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye-bye.